redwood burl, and this is cherry, and trim is middleback maple, soft maple, and the soundboard is Italian spruce, and the keys are a layer of ebony that covers the whole keyboard, and then on the raised keys there's a piece of ivory on top of the ebony, and then a piece of rosewood, and then a piece of ivory on top. So for those of you that are interested in these sorts of things, this ivory had another life on some pianos. And so I have a large collection, and so we didn't have to pirate but there's a lot of work in just making the raised keys themselves, not because they need to be tapered when you press the key down. It needs to be kind of level with the other keys. That facilitates negotiating around the back of the raised keys. And for the most part, the touch has to be executed as much as possible toward the front, because the balance point of the key is very close to the name board here. It has an extreme light touch. Pianos can be 50 to 60 grams and sometimes heavier, hopefully not, but some of them are. And this is probably about 8 grams for the keys to go down. So the keys go down about 2 millimeters. And of course there's extra room. The only thing that stops the key from going down is the string. So when you tune the piano, you have to, you have to use the exact same touch on every key, because, yeah, if you want to demonstrate. And so there's almost a therapeutic aspect of playing the clavichord, because like with the piano, when you play it right down to the bottom of the keyboard. But with this instrument, it has not only a much softer, easier touch, but it's an extremely short distance that the key travels. And it's almost as though there's a little micro switch just below the key that triggers the sound. And this is very much like playing a viola da gamba or a lute or a guitar, that when you hold your finger on the fingerboard, you need to be very near the fret. If you're on top of the fret, it kills the sound, and if you release the tension of your finger, the sound just goes away. And so part of the touch, I believe, in the clavichord, and of course Michael would be the expert on it, my feeling is you can't play this with a suave kind of touch that you would play with a piano. It's more like throwing a dart. How would you describe it? A romantic kind of touch just doesn't produce any sound. And a lot of times people feel that it's so delicate that, you mustn't hardly touch the keys, and that's not really true either. Yes?
How many keys does it have, and what octaves are they?
Well, it has 53 keys. 53 or 52? It's about a little more than an octave short in the bass. And I believe all of the music of Bach can be played on this keyboard.
You need, for a number of his pieces, it needs to go down to a low G. But in general, by playing things an octave higher, it doesn't.
Thank you.
So it goes up to an E. For some clavichords, they go up to an F. Some go higher.
F is the highest I've ever seen.
And Bach owned a Silbermann Clavichord. I'm not sure of the model. Do you know? Was this one? But it's a masterful design when you look at anatomy of this instrument, the way it's constructed, the way the pin block, the way the hitch pin rail goes in. It's really amazing. Of course, Silbermann was one of the greatest craftsmen of his day. Anybody else have a question? Yeah.
A question about the wood that is the soundboard.
Those spruce? It is spruce, and the European builders won't use anything but European spruce, and most of the German ones probably only use German spruce.
No, they get it in northern Italy, in the Alps.
Oh, that's where this came from.
Yeah.
And we build soundboards for old pianos, like for instance this piano, and I'm very careful that they save me the scraps, because I could glue together, it's maybe a half a dozen pieces that are glued together. Of course, all soundboards are all book matched. The violin is book matched, the guitar is book matched, but a piano is quite a few pieces of wood that are just seamed together. That's interesting.
And you could really consider it to be the soul of all keyboard instruments. In all the clavichord playing countries, they say if you can master the clavichord, you can play the harpsichord, the virginals, the fortepiano, the organ, anything. Now, there's a Dutch quote from the 18th century that says, "Practice the clavichord, perform on the harpsichord." So what we have here is really the ultimate practice instrument. It's like having a teacher in the room with you. If your hand is slightly off balance, or there's a little tension in there or something, there are any number of horrible sounds that it will make. Something needs to be changed with what you're doing. And all the other keyboard instruments are significantly more forgiving to that. And as far as performance on the clavichord goes, we have this report of Charles Burney, who sat next to C.P. Ebach and listened to him improvise for several hours. So there we have an audience of one. Apparently in the late, then also the Haas clavichord from 1742 in the Hamburg Museum, that has a lid painting showing someone playing the clavichord outside, which seems a little optimistic to me, but so in household situations where you have a room that would be significantly smaller than this, and then maybe there are 2 or 3 people sitting around and you're just doing the evening entertainment and playing some pieces, brilliant. But one of the things that the clavichord does that really no other instrument does is it's a true exploration of pianissimo.
Yes.
And oftentimes what people will find after listening to a prolonged recital of clavichord music or something is that just the way they're sensing things, listening to things in the room, it's a heightened sense from having been brought down to this decibel level.
It's a highly personal instrument. Not that the piano isn't, but there's 12,000 parts in the piano, not that many in the clavichord. And I find myself enjoying it a lot of times, mostly in the evening. I always use candles, and I always photocopy my music from the white paper to something that's a little more appropriate, and I make sure there's no fluorescent lights on anywhere. So I think that's the reason that you would like to play the clavichord, but as well as it really, I've heard from so many people that it really makes you a better piano player. And I think it's because everything is happening with this just small little micro movement of the key.
Also, there's very little in the way of the player and the string. It's basically a stick with a piece of metal in it. And if you consider that I won't even attempt to explain the modern piano mechanism, how much stuff is between depressing the key and what happens to the string. On the harpsichord, you've got the key, and then there's a jack, and then there's a tongue, and then there's a plectrum. So you're that far removed. In the organ, you press the key, and then a number of trackers are moved, which then take away the valve, and then the air goes into the pipe. So here it does what the player does.
And Bach wrote B minor, it was certainly a sad key, but E flat minor was severely sad.
I would say that Tim got this keyboard absolutely right. It feels fabulous, and so if you want to feel a great keyboard,
You're welcome to, you're all welcome to play it.
Well, how many hours or whatever you figure it took you to? It sounds like it's very intricate work.
Well, you know, I work all day on pianos, and then I work all night on clavichords. So, and then I play music too. I play the lute and I play the classical guitar. I don't play the piano. I mean, sometimes I do, but mostly just chords. And I love to play this instrument, the clavichord. So it's this one was about 5 years. And you know, when I retire from the pianos, I'm sure I can make one and really speedier time than that.